Raw sauerkraut is very good for the health of your gut. I've tried a lot of different ways of making sauerkraut. Some of them worked, many of them didn't. Let me tell you what I've learned. First of all you need to make sauerkraut is cabbage, a knife, a cutting board, a bowl to mix it in, some salt to mix it with, and a jar to let it ferment in. You don't need to add water. You don't need to buy a special starter. You don't need fancy lids. I'll start by removing some of the outer leaves in as large pieces as I can. We'll save them for later. And then we'll begin to cut the sauerkraut. You want to cut it in uniform size. Whatever size your pieces are, whether fine or coarser, they need to all be the same. You could do it all with a knife, cut up your whole cabbage. I happen to have a food processor, so I'm going to use it. There, my cabbage is shredded. Turns out that was a pretty big cabbage, about 5 pounds altogether. I needed a bigger bowl. Now we add salt. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of salt to this because it was such a big cabbage. Salt is important in preventing the growth of the bad bacteria. We want good bacteria that is so healthy for our guts. Now, the key to successful sauerkraut is to massage it with clean hands until it's juicy. This takes a while, gives you a good workout. You need to do this for about 10 minutes. I've been working this for about 10 minutes now. You want to squeeze it hard, press down on it. You're squeezing out the juices. Let's see if I can show you the juices in here. Okay, so when it gets to that point, it's time to stuff it into the jar. Again, we're going to be brutal. Just stuff it all in there. Push it down hard. This is where you might want to use a big wooden spoon. If you had something with a flat end, that would be even better. The important thing is to squeeze down the cabbage into the juice. The secret is for it to be totally submerged. You don't want any cabbage to be in contact with the air. Now, this bowl is just about empty. Whoops, don't want to lose any of that juice. That whole 5-pound cabbage is going to fit into one 2-liter or 2-quart jar. And it's very important to put that juice in. Whoa, you know what? I think maybe I won't put in that last tiny bit. I want to show you a nice close-up so you can see how much juice we have in here. That juice all came from the cabbage. I've not added any water to this. Now, the key to successful fermenting of sauerkraut is to keep that cabbage submersed in the water. And that's the tricky part. One way I've seen it done is to fill a Ziploc plastic bag with water, put it in. It has to be squeezed around the edge so there's no place for air to slip in. That works pretty well with a bag of water. I'm just not keen on having plastic next to my food. So what I found works well, next to, of course, if you had one of those nice old-fashioned crocks with a plate that just fit perfectly in the top, they used to put a rock on top to keep the cabbage submerged. But I don't have that either. So this is why we saved some cabbage from the start. If we stuff our cabbage leaf in there, and I really filled mine too full probably. But the cabbage leaf will hold down the cabbage. It doesn't matter if the liquid rises above the cabbage leaf, but you want your cabbage to stay underneath. I'm just going to set this on, put the lid on loosely, put this in the cupboard. I'll check on it every day, but it'll probably sit there for a week. It takes about a week to ferment, depending on the temperature. So if your room is warm, it will happen a little bit faster. But you want to check it every day to make sure that your cabbage is still submerged. Now I'd like to show you a jar of sauerkraut that I've had fermenting for 5 days. This one looks a little different because I didn't have as much cabbage and it's not as full. So I wanted to show you what I did in that situation. I put some weights in. I just happened to find these that fit because I needed them to hold my cabbage leaf down. So you do whatever you can. Now let's get you a close-up of what this is looking like. And when I put my weights in, there to keep my cabbage submerged in the liquid. So this is what I check on every day. I give them a little push to make sure that all around the cabbage is submerged. I'm back a week later with our original jar of sauerkraut. I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, I found that I did need to set it on a plate in the cupboard because this jar was so full that it was overflowing. Also, through time, as you keep pressing down, you have a little bit more room. So my jar was no longer full enough for the lid to keep it pressed down. So I put in one of these little ramekins and I pressed on that a little every day. Let's remove our cabbage leaf from the top and enjoy our sauerkraut. Now I'll put a lid on it and seal it up tight and keep it in the fridge.